Potter and the Chamber of Secrets by J.K. Rowling. He looked up at Justin, grinning, expecting to see Justin looking relieved or puzzled, or even grateful, but certainly not angry and scared. "What do you think you're playing at?" he shouted, and before Harry could say anything, Justin had turned and stormed out of the hall. Snape stepped forward, waved his hands, and the snake vanished in a small puff of black smoke. Snape, too, was looking at Harry in an expected way. It was a shrewd and calculating look, and Harry didn't like it. He was also dimly aware of an ominous muttering all around the walls. Then he felt a tugging at the back of his robes. "Come on," said Ron's voice in his ear. "Move, come on." Ron steered him out of the hall, Hermione hurrying alongside them. As they went through the doors, the people on either side drew away as though they were frightened of catching something. Harry didn't have a clue what was going on, and neither Ron nor Hermione explained anything until they had dragged him all the way up to the empty Gryffindor common room. Then Ron pushed Harry into an armchair and said, "You're a Parselmouth. Why didn't you tell us?" "I'm a what?" said Harry. "A Parselmouth," said Ron. "You can talk to snakes." "I know," said Harry. "I mean, that's only the second time I've ever done it. I accidentally set a boa constrictor on my cousin Dudley at the zoo once. Long story. But it was telling me that I had never seen Basil, and sort of set it free without meaning to. That was before I knew I was a wizard." "A boa constrictor told you it had never seen Basil?" Ron repeated faintly. "So," said Harry, "I bet lots of people here can do it." "Oh, no, they can't," said Ron. "It's not a very common gift, Harry. This is bad." "What's bad?" said Harry, starting to feel quite angry. "What's wrong with everyone? Listen, if I hadn't told that snake not to attack Justin..." "Oh, that's what you said to it? What do you mean?" "You were there. You heard me." "I heard you speak in Parcel tone," said Ron. "Snake language. You could have just been saying anything." No wonder Justin panicked. "You sounded like you were egging the snake on or to something. It was creepy, you know?" Harry gaped at him. "I spoke a different language, but I didn't realize. How can I speak a language without knowing I can speak it?" Ron shook his head. Both he and Hermione were looking as though someone had died. Harry couldn't see what was so terrible. "Do you want to tell me what's wrong with stopping a dirty great snake biting Justin's head off?" he said. "What does it matter how I did it, as long as Justin doesn't have to join the headless hunt?" "It matters," said Hermione, speaking at last in a hushed voice, "because being able to talk to snakes, that was Salazar Slytherin famous for. That's why the symbol of Slytherin's house is a serpent." Harry's mouth fell open. "Exactly," said Ron. "And now the whole school's going to think you're his great-great-great-grandson or something." "But I'm not," said Harry with a pang he couldn't quite explain. "You'll find that hard to prove," said Hermione. "He lied about 1,000 years ago. For all we know, you could be." Harry lay awake for hours that night. Through a gap in the hangings around his four-poster, he watched snow starting to drift past the tower window and wondered, could he be a descendant of Salazar Slytherin? He didn't know anything about his father's family, after all. The Dursleys were always forbidding questions about his wizarding relatives. Quietly, Harry tried to say something in personal tone. The words wouldn't come. It seemed he had to be face to face with a snake to do it. "But I'm in Gryffindor," Harry thought. "The Sorting Hat wouldn't have put me in here if I was Slytherin blood." Said a nasty little voice in his brain. "But the Sorting Hat wanted to put you in Slytherin, don't you remember?" Harry turned over. He'd seen Justin next day in herbology, and he'd explained that he'd been calling the snake off, not egging on which. He thought that gorilla pumping his pillow. Any fool should have realized. By next morning, however, the snow that had begun in the night had turned into a blizzard, so thick that the last herbology lesson of term was cancelled. Professor Sprout wanted to fit socks and scarves on the mandrakes, a tricky operation she would entrust no one else. Now that it was so important for the mandrakes to grow quickly and revive Mrs. Norris and Colin Creevy. Harry fretted about his next to the fire in the Gryffindor common room, while Ron and Hermione used their lessons off to play a game of wizard chess. "For heaven's sake, Harry," said Hermione, exasperated, as one of Thrope's bishops wrestled her knight off his horse and dragged him off the board. "Go and find Justin. It's so important to you." So Harry got up and left through the portrait hole, wondering where Justin might be. The castle was darker than it usually was in daytime because of the thick, swirling great snow at every window. Shivering, Harry walked past classrooms where lessons were taking place, catching snatches of what was happening within. Professor McGonagall was shouting at someone about who, by the sound of it, had turned his friend into a badger. Resist the urge to take a look, Harry walked on by, thinking that Justin might be using his free lesson to catch up on some work, and decided to check the library first. A group of the Hufflepuffs who should have been in herbology were indeed sitting at the back of the library, but they didn't seem to be walking. Between the long lines of high bookshelves, Harry could see that their heads were close together. They were having what looked like an absorbing conversation. He couldn't see whether Justin was among them. He was walking towards them when something of they were saying met his ears, and he paused to listen, hidden in the invisibility section. So anyway, a stout boy was saying, I've told Justin to hide up in our dormitory, and mean to say, if Potter has marked him down as his next victim. It's best if he keeps a low profile for a while. Of course, Justin's been waiting for something like this to happen ever since he let slip to Potter he was Muggle-born. Justin actually told him he'd been down for Eton. That's not the kind of thing you bandy about with Slytherin's Harren lose, is it? You definitely think it is Potter then, Ernie, said a girl with blonde pigtails anxiously. Hannah, said the stout boy softly. He's a personal. Everyone knows what's the Dark Wizard. Have you ever heard of a decent one who could talk to snakes? They called Slytherin himself Serpentine. There was one heavy murmuring at this, and Ernie went on. Remember what was written on the wall? Enemies of the hair beware. Potter had some sort of run-in with Filch. Next thing we know, Filch's cat is attacked. That first year, Creevy was anointing Potter at the Quidditch match, taking pictures of him, while he was lying in the mud. Next thing we know, Creevy's been attacked. He always seems so nice though, said Hannah uncertainly. And, well, he's the one who made you-know-who disappear. He can't be all bad, can he? Ernie lowered his voice mysteriously. The Hufflepuffs bent closer, and Harry edged nearer so that he could edge Ernie's words. No one knows how he survived the attack. Not you-know-who. I mean to say, he was only a baby when it happened. He should have been blasted into smithereens. Only a really powerful dark wizard could have survived a curse like that. He dropped his voice until it was barely more than a whisper, and said, that's probably why you-know-who wanted to kill him in the first place. Didn't want another Dark Lord competing with him. I wonder what other powers Potter has been hiding. Harry couldn't take any more. Clearing his throat loudly, he stepped out from behind the bookshelves. If he hadn't been feeling so angry, who could have found the sign that greeted him funny? Every one of the Hufflepuffs looked as though they had been petrified by the sight of him, and the color was draining off Ernie's face. Hello, said Harry. I'm looking for Justin Filch Fletching. The Hufflepuff's forced Filch had clearly been confirmed. They all looked fearfully at Ernie. What do you want with him? Said Ernie in a quartering voice. I wanted to tell him what really happened with the snake at the Dueling Club, said Harry. Ernie bit white lips and went taking a deep breath. We were all there. We saw what happened. Then you notice that I spoke to it, the snake back off? All I saw, said Ernie stubbornly. He was trembling as he spoke. Was you speaking Parseltongue and chasing the snake towards Justin? I didn't chase it at him, said Redhead, his voice shaken with anger. It didn't even touch him. It was a very near miss, said Harry. And in case you're getting ideas, he added hastily, I might tell you what you can trace my family back through 9 generations of witches and warlocks, and my blood is as pure as anyone, so... I don't care what sort of blood you got, said Harry fiercely. Why would I want to attack Muggleborns? I heard you had those smuggles you live with, said Ernie swiftly. It's not possible to live with the Dursleys and not hate them, said Harry. I'd like to see you try it. He turned on his heel and stormed out of the library, earning himself a reproving glare from Madame Pince, who was polishing the glittered cover of a large spellbook. Harry blundered up the corridor, barely noticing where he was going. He was in such a flurry. The result was that he walked into something very large and solid, which knocked him backward onto the floor. Oh, hello, Hagrid, said Redhead, looking up. Hagrid's face was entirely hidden by a woolly, snow-covered baklava, but it couldn't possibly be anyone else, as he filled most of the corridor in his molesking overcoat. A dead rooster was hanging out on his massive gloved hands. All right, Harry, he said, pulling up the balaclava so he could speak. Why are you in class? Consult, said Harry, getting up. What are you doing here? Hagrid held up the limp rooster. Second one killed his son, he explained. It's the foxes or the blood-sucking bugbear, and I need the headmaster's permission to put a charm round the hen coop. He peered more closely at Harry from under his thick, snow-flecked eyebrows. Yeah, sure, you're right. Yeah, looked hard as bothered. Harry couldn't bring himself to repeat what Ernie and the rest of the Hufflepuffs had been saying about him. It's nothing, he said. I'd better go with Hagrid. It's Transfiguration next, and I'm going to pick up my books.